A quiet hospital room, a small girl staring out the window, and a sentence that would stop anyone's heart. She softly whispered that this would be her last birthday, not because she didn't want another one, but because the doctors had already given up hope. At just 12 years old, Lily had spent months fighting an illness that slowly stole her strength, her laughter, and the life she once knew. While other kids planned parties and blew out candles, she was preparing to say goodbye. But somewhere in that hospital hallway, someone heard her whisper. A quiet maintenance worker who had lost his own daughter years ago. And what he did next turned a simple birthday into something no one in that hospital would ever forget. A night filled with stars, tears, and a miracle no one saw coming. If you believe kindness can change lives, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us, because this story will touch your heart. The nurse almost didn't hear it. The room was quiet except for the slow, rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor and the faint hum of the hospital air conditioner. Outside the window, the world moved as if nothing had changed. Cars passing, people walking, children laughing somewhere in the distance. But inside that small hospital room, time felt heavy, as though every second carried a quiet goodbye. Lying on the bed was a thin girl with tired eyes and a soft smile that didn't quite reach them. She looked toward the window where pale sunlight touched the edge of her blanket, and in a voice so gentle it sounded like a secret, she whispered that this was her last birthday. Before the story continues, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small miracles. Stories like this remind us that even in the darkest moments, one act of compassion can change everything. Her name was Lily Carter, and she was only 12 years old. 12 birthdays should have meant balloons, cake, and laughter, but Lily had spent the last 8 months inside hospital walls. The illness that had taken over her body had moved quickly and cruelly, stealing her strength day by day. Doctors spoke in careful voices and hopeful words, but everyone understood the truth hiding beneath those words. Lily understood it too. Children sometimes see things more clearly than adults wish they would. Lily had once been the kind of child who ran faster than the wind and laughed louder than anyone in the playground. Her favorite place in the world had been the park near her home, where tall oak trees cast cool shadows over the grass. She used to climb those trees with fearless determination, reaching branches that made her mother gasp in worry. The sky had felt endless then, and so had life. But hospitals have a way of shrinking the world. Now Lily's universe was contained in a small room with pale green walls, a window overlooking the parking lot, and machines that whispered constantly about her fragile health. The nurses tried their best to brighten the space with stickers and colorful drawings taped to the walls, but no decoration could hide the quiet truth of the place. Her mother, Sarah, rarely left the chair beside Lily's bed. The woman who had once been energetic and full of laughter now carried exhaustion in her eyes. Sleepless nights and silent prayers had carved shadows beneath them. She brushed Lily's hair gently every morning, pretending everything was normal, pretending there would be many more mornings just like this one. But Lily had grown observant during her long stay in the hospital. She noticed the way doctors paused before answering questions. She noticed how nurses squeezed her hand a little longer than usual. And she noticed how her mother sometimes turned toward the window, wiping tears before turning back with a forced smile. So when Lily whispered that this might be her last birthday, she wasn't being dramatic. She was simply telling the truth she felt deep in her heart. Down the hall from Lily's room worked a man named Daniel Reeves. Daniel was not a doctor or a nurse. He was part of the hospital maintenance team, a quiet man who spent most of his days fixing lights, repairing doors, and making sure everything in the building worked the way it should. At 42 years old, Daniel had learned how to keep his head down and his thoughts to himself. Life had not been gentle with him.
5 years earlier, he had lost his own daughter, Emily, in a car accident that had shattered his world into pieces he still hadn't fully gathered. Since then, the hospital had become more than just a job for him. It had become a place where he could stay busy enough to avoid the silence waiting at home. Daniel didn't talk much with patients. He believed it was easier that way. But one afternoon, as he passed Lily's room while fixing a flickering light in the hallway, he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. Through the slightly open door came the sound of Lily's voice. She was speaking softly to her mother, her words carrying the calm acceptance of someone far older than 12. She said she didn't want a big celebration this year. She said she knew everyone was trying to stay hopeful, but she felt tired in a way she couldn't explain. She said that if this really was her last birthday, she hoped it could be simple and peaceful. Daniel stood frozen in the hallway. Those words hit him like a sudden storm. For a moment, he was no longer in a hospital corridor. He was standing beside a small pink birthday cake in a kitchen that smelled of vanilla frosting, watching his daughter Emily blow out 9 candles while giggling with joy. Emily loved birthdays. The memory made his chest tighten painfully. He leaned against the wall, breathing slowly as the past crashed into the present. Losing Emily had taught him something he had never expected to learn, that the world could move forward even when your heart felt permanently stuck in yesterday. And yet, hearing Lily's quiet acceptance stirred something inside him that had been silent for years. Later that evening, Daniel found himself walking past Lily's room again. The door was closed now, but colorful drawings taped to it caught his attention. Crayon pictures of animals, rainbows, and smiling suns covered the surface like small bursts of hope. One drawing stood out. It showed a girl standing beneath a sky full of stars, holding a balloon shaped like a heart. Beneath the picture were uneven letters written carefully in purple marker. "Someday I want to see the stars up close." Daniel stared at the drawing for a long time. Something about those words settled deeply in his chest. He didn't know Lily personally. He didn't know her favorite food or the games she used to play. But he understood something important in that moment. A child who believed she might not have another birthday deserved something more than a quiet day inside a hospital room. She deserved something unforgettable. Daniel walked back to the maintenance office slowly, his mind racing with thoughts he hadn't felt in years. For the first time since Emily's accident, he felt the faint stirring of purpose. Maybe, just maybe, he couldn't change Lily's illness, but perhaps he could change her birthday. And sometimes, one beautiful day is powerful enough to last forever.
Daniel did not sleep much that night. The idea had planted itself in his mind like a seed refusing to be ignored. Long after his shift ended and the hospital halls grew quiet, he sat alone in the small maintenance office, staring at the faded bulletin board on the wall. Tools hung neatly on metal hooks, and a half-empty coffee cup sat forgotten on the desk. But Daniel's thoughts were far away from broken lights and loose door hinges. All he could hear was Lily's soft voice whispering that this might be her last birthday, and he couldn't accept that the day would pass like any other. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work earlier than usual. The hospital parking lot was still half empty, the sky painted in soft pink light as the sun slowly climbed above the buildings. He walked through the quiet corridors with a determined expression that surprised even himself. For years he had moved through these halls like a ghost, fixing problems, nodding politely, and disappearing again. But today felt different. Today he had a mission. The first person he spoke to was Maria, one of the nurses who often worked in the pediatric ward. Maria had known Lily since the girl arrived at the hospital months earlier. She had been there through the long treatments, the difficult nights, and the small moments of courage that Lily showed again and again. When Daniel approached her at the nurse's station, she looked up in mild surprise. He cleared his throat awkwardly before asking a simple question. When was Lily's birthday? Maria hesitated, studying his serious face. She had seen Daniel around for years, always quiet and respectful, but rarely involved with patients. After a moment, she answered that Lily's birthday was in 3 days. Daniel nodded slowly. 3 days. It wasn't much time, but it was enough. He asked Maria another question, one that made her eyes widen with curiosity. He wanted to know everything Lily liked, her favorite color, her favorite movies, her favorite music, the things that made her smile. Maria leaned against the counter, slowly realizing that something special was forming in Daniel's mind. And when he finally explained his idea, her eyes filled with tears. Because the plan was simple but beautiful. If Lily believed it would be her last birthday, then they would make it the most magical birthday a child could imagine. Daniel wanted to transform the hospital floor into something extraordinary. Not just balloons and cake, something bigger, something unforgettable. Maria didn't hesitate for a second. She promised to help. Within an hour, word began spreading quietly through the pediatric ward. Nurses whispered to each other in hallways. Doctors paused between appointments to listen. Even hospital volunteers leaned closer when they heard the story. A 12-year-old girl who believed she might never celebrate another birthday, and a quiet maintenance worker determined to change that day forever. The response was immediate and overwhelming. One nurse offered to bring decorations from home. Another promised to bake cupcakes. A volunteer who used to work as a children's party planner suggested ideas for transforming the hallway. Soon the small plan began growing into something far bigger than Daniel had imagined. But the most important part of the idea came from something he had seen on Lily's door. The drawing of the girl under the stars. The words she had written about wanting to see them up close. So Daniel decided that Lily's birthday would not simply happen in a hospital room. It would happen under the stars. Of course, real stars weren't possible inside a hospital building, but Daniel knew exactly how to create something magical with the right equipment. That afternoon, he made phone calls to local event companies and explained what he was trying to do. Many of them agreed to lend equipment for free once they heard the story. By evening, a small storage room in the hospital was slowly filling with boxes of lights, decorations, and supplies. String lights that looked like glowing constellations. Projectors that could paint moving stars across the ceiling. Soft blue and silver decorations that would transform the hallway into a night sky. Even a small portable planetarium dome was offered by a local science center after one volunteer reached out to them. The idea became bigger than anyone expected. But there was one person who still didn't know about it. Lily. For the next 2 days, the entire pediatric ward worked quietly behind the scenes. Decorations were hidden carefully. Plans were whispered in corners. Nurses distracted Lily with games and movies whenever someone needed to pass by with boxes or equipment. Lily remained unaware. She spent most of her time resting, sometimes drawing pictures in a small notebook she kept beside her bed. Her strength had faded significantly in the recent weeks, but her gentle smile still appeared whenever someone stopped by to talk. Daniel watched from a distance during those days. He never entered her room. He never spoke to her directly. He simply worked quietly in the background, building something beautiful for a child who didn't even know his name. On the night before Lily's birthday, the transformation finally began. After visitors' hours ended and most of the hospital quieted, the team gathered in the pediatric hallway. Nurses, volunteers, doctors, and even a few hospital administrators rolled up their sleeves and began decorating. String lights were stretched across the ceiling like glowing galaxies. Dark blue fabric was draped along the walls to create the illusion of an endless night sky. Small glowing stars were attached everywhere, on doors, windows, and even the floor.
and at the center of the hallway, Daniel carefully assembled the portable planetarium dome. Inside it, hundreds of tiny lights would create a breathtaking illusion of a star-filled universe. By midnight, the hospital corridor had become something extraordinary. A quiet hallway had turned into a magical sky. When Daniel finally stepped back to look at the finished scene, he felt something inside his chest shift gently. For the first time in years, the heavy weight of grief that had lived in his heart seemed slightly lighter. Maybe kindness really could heal small pieces of broken hearts. Tomorrow would be Lily's birthday, and it would be a day she would never forget.
The morning of Lily's birthday arrived quietly, the way most hospital mornings do. Soft sunlight slipped through the windows, painting pale shapes on the floor as nurses moved gently through the hallways, beginning their shifts. To anyone walking past the pediatric ward, everything seemed completely normal. But behind the closed double doors of that hallway, something magical waited. The decorations had been carefully hidden behind curtains and movable panels during the night, so Lily would not see them too early. Daniel had insisted that the moment needed to feel like a surprise, straight out of a dream. At 8 o'clock that morning, Nurse Maria stepped into Lily's room with her usual warm smile. Lily was awake, sitting up slowly in bed while her mother brushed her hair. There was a quiet stillness in the room, the kind that carried both love and sadness at the same time. Birthdays are supposed to be joyful, but everyone in that room knew this one felt different. Lily's smile was soft and grateful, but behind it was a calm acceptance that made her seem older than her years. She thanked her mother for braiding her hair neatly and said she wanted to look nice today. It was a small detail, but it made Sarah's heart ache. Maria gently told Lily that some of the nurses wanted to take her for a short walk in the hallway as a birthday surprise. Lily seemed curious, but didn't ask many questions. Walking had become difficult for her lately, but with a wheelchair and a little help, she agreed. As Maria carefully guided the wheelchair toward the door, Daniel stood around the corner in the hallway with dozens of hospital staff members gathered quietly behind him. Doctors, nurses, janitors, volunteers, even the hospital director had come to witness what was about to happen. Everyone waited silently. The moment felt almost sacred. The door slowly opened. At first, Lily only saw the normal hospital corridor. The lights were still bright, and the decorations were hidden carefully behind curtains placed along the walls. She looked around with mild curiosity, wondering what the surprise might be. Then, Daniel gave a small signal. One by one, the hallway lights turned off. For a brief moment, everything went dark. Lily's eyes widened slightly. And then the magic began. Hundreds of tiny lights flickered on across the ceiling, glowing like distant stars scattered through the darkness. Soft blue lighting filled the hallway, creating the gentle illusion of a night sky stretching endlessly above them. Gasps echoed softly from people standing nearby, but no one gasped louder than Lily. Her tired eyes suddenly filled with amazement as she looked upward. The ceiling had transformed into a galaxy of glowing stars that shimmered softly like something out of a dream. The dark fabric along the walls made it feel as though the hospital had disappeared completely. Instead of a sterile corridor, Lily now sat beneath a beautiful sky filled with light. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached upward. For the first time in months, pure wonder filled her face. The wheelchair slowly rolled forward into the center of the hallway, where the planetarium dome waited like a glowing silver bubble. The entrance flap opened gently, and soft music began playing in the background. Inside the dome, thousands of stars glowed even brighter.
Daniel watched from the side as Lily was wheeled inside. The moment she entered, her breath caught. The dome surrounded her completely with a breathtaking universe. Constellations moved slowly across the curved ceiling, planets drifted gently through the darkness, and shooting stars flashed quietly across the sky. It felt like floating through space. For a long moment, Lily didn't speak at all. She simply stared upward with wide, shining eyes. Then tears began rolling slowly down her cheeks. They were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of wonder. Her mother covered her mouth as she cried beside her. Nurses wiped their eyes. Even some of the doctors turned away for a moment, overwhelmed by the beauty of what they were witnessing. But the surprises weren't finished yet. When Lily rolled back out of the dome, the hallway suddenly filled with music as hospital staff stepped forward, holding glowing balloons that looked like floating planets. A beautiful birthday cake appeared, decorated with tiny silver stars and 12 bright candles. Everyone began singing. The sound echoed warmly through the starlit corridor. Lily looked around slowly at the faces surrounding her. Many of them were people who had cared for her every day during her stay. Nurses who brought her medicine, doctors who checked on her progress, volunteers who played games with her during long afternoons. But there were also strangers, people who had come simply because they heard her story. And standing quietly near the back was Daniel, the man who had started it all. Lily didn't know his name yet, but she noticed him standing there with his hands folded, watching with gentle eyes. Something about his expression felt kind and familiar. After the song ended, Lily leaned forward and blew out the candles. The hallway erupted in applause. It wasn't a loud celebration like the parties children usually have. It was something softer, something more meaningful. Every clap carried love. Every smile carried hope. Lily looked up again at the glowing stars and whispered something that Maria happened to hear. She said she had always wanted to see the stars like this, and now she felt like she was inside them. A little while later, Maria guided Daniel forward. He looked slightly nervous as he approached Lily's wheelchair. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Words often fail when emotions run this deep. But Lily solved the problem herself. She smiled at him gently and asked him if he was the one who made the stars appear. Daniel nodded slowly. Lily reached out and took his hand. Her voice was quiet but full of sincerity when she told him that this was the most beautiful birthday she had ever seen. Daniel felt his throat tighten. He had spent years carrying the weight of losing his daughter, believing that nothing could ever bring light back into that empty place in his heart. But in that moment, standing beneath hundreds of glowing stars, beside a smiling 12-year-old girl, something inside him healed just a little. Kindness created something powerful, and that power belonged to everyone in that hallway. Before we reach the end of this story, take a moment to tell us something in the comments. What is the most unforgettable act of kindness you have ever witnessed or experienced? Your story might inspire someone else today who needs hope. The celebration lasted for hours. Lily tasted cake, watched the moving constellations again inside the dome, and listened as people shared stories and laughter around her. For the first time in many months, the hospital no longer felt like a place of sickness. It felt like a place of life, and Lily's smile never faded. As evening approached and the lights slowly dimmed, Lily rested peacefully in her room again. Through the doorway, she could still see some of the glowing stars in the hallway. She whispered softly that it had been the best birthday of her life. And something remarkable happened in the weeks that followed. Lily's condition, which had once seemed hopeless, began showing small but steady improvement.
Doctors were cautious about explaining it, but sometimes the human spirit responds to hope in ways medicine cannot fully measure. Her strength slowly returned, her smile grew brighter, and although the future remained uncertain, Lily now carried a memory powerful enough to last a lifetime, because someone had listened to a quiet whisper and turned it into a universe of stars. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel so more people can hear stories that remind us how powerful kindness can be. Sometimes a single moment of compassion is enough to change a life, and sometimes it can light up the sky.